All right. So we're back in God of War. I guess we're officially in the story that you wanted to talk about when we started this kind of accidental two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
To start this one off, what fight impressed you the most, or like what quick scene impressed you the most in God of War 4?
I think it's the first time that Kratos truly tells his son that he is a god. It's just powerfully shot. The technology to capture the expressions of actors and their emotions has just come so far that like I was completely engrossed in it.
Well, let's get into the rest of it
Yeah.
then. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Time. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. My name is Amanda Stevens, and I'm your host. On this show, we tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a reason... Oh, my God. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read.
You just really lost it there.
I totally lost it. I'm not alone in studio today. I'm joined by my incredibly good friend, the inimitable Jared Friesen. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me for a second part.
Thanks for holding it down in the studio today.
For whatever we're doing.
Oh, well. Is there anything you want to say to introduce yourself? Reintroduce yourself just real quick.
Again, I'm quickly becoming the video game guy for this show, but outside of that, I've been a teacher in Taiwan for 4 years, teaching English, with a real love for storytelling and art and just the way we interact with media that moves us too. And the one I've chosen today is God of War 4 from 2018.
Yeah. So this is actually a two-parter. So this is the second half of our two-parter on God of War 4. If you missed it last time, the last episode that we did kind of covered the previous 3 games in the original God of War trilogy, because the 4th game really is in close conversation with them. And what that means from like a narrative point of view is that it is really examining those first 3 games and how they would have affected the character, the main character of Kratos, and kind of how they have affected his journey so far. Would you say that's like an accurate summation of that?
Yeah, as we were sitting here kind of reflecting on it, I viewed it as like they use the first trilogy of games as like a very good foil in the narrative. A foil in a story is a character or element of the plot that is used to contrast character elements of the main character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in this case, it's just the past of Kratos with his new present.
Yeah. Even in God of War 4, I think, there's a lot of reflections of who he was in those first games, in the characters that he meets, sometimes even in his own son. So we're just going to get down to it because we have a lot to say about this game and this narrative, I think. So if you want to know more about the previous trilogy, go ahead and check out that first episode that we dropped last time. Otherwise, I think we're just going to get right into the summary.
Yeah.
Take it away, Jared.
All right, so God of War 4 picks up some indeterminate amount of time after the first trilogy. We are now in the lands of Norse mythology, starting mainly in Midgard, which is just Earth.
Yeah.
Kratos lives in the woods with his son Atreus and his late wife Faye, who at the start of the game, you as Kratos, go about building a pyre for and burning her to cremate her.
Yeah, she's died just off screen.
Just before the story.
Right before the story. Much like in the first game.
But in this case, Kratos is collecting her ashes with his son, Atreus, and they are going to go follow her last wishes and take them and spread them on the highest peak in all the 9 realms. As they go, they realize danger is following them too, and they are forced out of this safe wooded glen that they've lived in. Balder of the Norse gods, like a servant from Odin, from Odin and Thor and all those gods, comes looking for someone in his house, and Kratos does not know why. In this game, Odin and the Norse gods are the antagonists.
Yeah.
You never see Odin, but Balder is the main antagonist chasing you. Their journey is kind of set upon from the get-go. And
Yeah.
so they are chased as much as they are going towards their goal of spreading these ashes. Along the way, they get pulled into more and more conflict of the wider world, and they see it's not as safe or as
idyllic, maybe.
Yeah. But part and parcel to that is Atreus is also getting sick unknown wise, because Kratos has never told his son that he's a god
Yeah.
or part god.
At the start of the game, we know that he's at least half god.
And so Atreus doesn't know, and Kratos does, but is wanting to keep that from him because of who he was and the kind of god he was in the first 3 games. He's like, no, you're going to be normal. You're going to learn how to just be a normal, responsible person who lives their life simply.
You're not going to blow up Olympus.
No killing unless it's hunting or self-defense. You're not going to be an angry person. Like, you're going to try and be better than I was.
Yeah.
And so they go through, they meet other characters that help them along their way. Mimir, the wisest man in the world. Freya, a witch in the woods, and is also the mother of Balder, who is chasing them. And Odin's ex-wife, who they're now estranged from too. As the story progresses, you find out the highest mountain in the realms is not in Midgard, it's in Jotunheim. And Balder stands in the way because Odin is looking for a way to get to Jotunheim and finish the giants who might end the world in Ragnarok.
Right. And a quick side note, Jotunheim, for those who don't know, is the land of the giants. So as you were, sorry.
No, we're pretty close to the end. And about that time, Balder catches up with them and threatens them. And so Kratos has to finally defeat Balder, and he and his son are able to go to Jotunheim and spread his wife's ashes. And there's a lot of like character growth and interpersonal relationship expressed through dialogue that we did not cover, but I'd love to dive into.
I will circle back to this. Does Kratos tell his son that he's a god?
Yes. Eventually, in order to heal his son from the narrative illness, he has to tell his son both that he is a god and reveal that Kratos himself is a god, and not a god that he feels proud of being.
Yeah, it is a good place to like start up the series again. Kind of, like he is ashamed or remorseful. I think is a better word for the god that he was when he was younger, which is totally opposite from what was happening in the first games. Tonally, character-wise, everything else. So I think that's where I want to start. Normally, I would ask you what your first experience was with this game, but I kind of want to continue the conversation we were having before and ask what themes I think really jumped out to you in the story. Maybe even themes that were carried over from the first trilogy.
I think we talked about like the place of violence in this, and definitely Kratos reflecting on a life of inconsiderate violence. He was only consumed with his revenge and how he felt about the outcomes of his actions, with little regard for anyone else. And Atreus, by comparison, is a very kind and compassionate child. Like, he loves animals. He's incredibly curious. He's great with languages and reading. And he's just like this bright, excited kid who's ready to go out in the world. And Kratos is so worried and concerned with like what is out there in the world and getting sucked into the world of gods, because all he knows is when you get involved with the gods, people you care about die, or you wind up killing the people you care about too.
So I haven't played this game myself, but I did actually watch you play it when you were preparing for Ragnarok.
The sequel.
Not the end of the world, but when you were preparing for the sequel to this game. And I think it's fun we brought up foils before, because a fun foil to Kratos and Atreus' relationship is, in my opinion, the relationship between Freya and Balder, who are another mother and son, versus the father and son, and kind of the ways in which we see the parent.
They definitely mirror each other.
Like want to protect each other.
Like she is kind of the end goal of too much protection of your child, because in mythology, Freya, and in this game, is worried about the death of Balder, because that is one part of the prophecy of Ragnarok, is that Balder will die. And so Freya goes around and creates an enchantment where nothing can hurt Balder.
Except for mistletoe. Which can break curses. And so Balder has lived the last, I think the game implies at least 100 years. Without any sensation.
Balder cannot feel the snow, and they're essentially in Norway. So he's the only character who walks around shirtless.
I think Kratos does a little bit, but that does feel out of place.
Does feel out of place, but it is very noticeable for him too. He can't feel anything, and you have the first introduction with Balder is essentially a fist fight in the snow, where he just gets up and walks off, grievous amounts of bodily injury, smashing mountains,
Like
breaking
begging
trees.
to feel something.
Yeah, and so with Freya, she took away the choice from her son by protecting him too much. Whereas Kratos is at that inflection point of like, will me not sharing all the information with my son and trusting him to take the lessons I've taught him, will that work? Or should I keep my hand on the rein, so to speak, and continue to guide him even as he bucks against it, maybe to his detriment?
Yeah, kind of like the idea of what you think is best versus what the kids themselves want. And even like, what do they deserve? Do you owe your kids the truth about the things that you've done in the past? Right? And how should that affect how you parent them in the present now?
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to like grow and become better as Kratos is. Another theme that you mentioned before was kind of the cyclical nature of the storytelling, both in Kratos' life and in the foils that we see around him, like in that of Freya and Balder. Could you speak to that for a moment?
I think in the first trilogy, he's very much the aggressor because of his loss. And eventually going past that, it just keeps motivating him through like different injustices done to him. Like he keeps finding a justification for all the violence against him. Whereas in the sequel, the only reason he is leaving is because someone's asked him to do something, and he's honoring that relationship to his wife. And other than that, he seems very risk averse, very hesitant to get into any sort of like injustices or adventures in the outer world.
And other people's problems.
In other
as
people's
he views
problems.
them.
He is only concerned with honoring his wife's wishes and protecting his son, even from his own nature.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting moment too in that where right after Atreus finds out that he's a god, he kind of does what a lot of us I think would do, and he lets it go to his head immediately.
Well, he is also 12.
Right. And like he takes it to an extremely violent place, which is also understandable when you consider that he lost his mom in game time, like yesterday. But like he finds out he's a god, he lost his mom like yesterday, he almost died, and he quickly, for a period of time, goes power crazy and stops caring about the people that they're hurting and goes in a really violent direction.
And actually a beautiful moment for Kratos, he takes him aside and actually talks to him very, very roughly and very sternly and saying like, you're dishonoring your mother's memory. As like Faye is this kind of figure who taught both of them compassion.
Yeah.
And like that connection of like, hey, this is not honoring a person we both cared about.
Yeah.
Whereas his son has felt his dad has been very closed off, and Kratos doesn't have any emotions or doesn't care about anything. He's like,
He is
no, I
pretty
do.
emotionless.
He is. He's very stoic. I mean, stoicism was invented in Sparta.
Oh, you know what? That's true.
Yeah.
You did make a good point. Go on. As you
And
were.
so, but again, withholding. You don't need my emotions. You need my knowledge. But no, he does need that empathy.
Yeah.
Literally, he needs empathy.
Yeah, he does.
And he doesn't have that model anymore. So Kratos has to step up and be empathetic too. So I think in that moment, reminding them of a very compassionate person too also helped.
Compassionate and responsible, I would
Yes.
push as well. You know, like, what did we say? Like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But you're a god. Most people can't do back to you. Like, your compassion is what made you strong. And like, that's what made you a better god. And you don't want to end up like the subtext or I don't even remember if he says it directly, like, you don't want to be a god like me.
Who did not care.
So I think tying it back to kind of more of our normal formula, why do you think that God of War 4 is a tale of our time? Is it related to those cycles? Is it something else? What do you think, what can other people really get from this?
I think going into it with a little bit of knowledge of the franchise it used to be is very helpful to kind of set the tone of, oh, we think this character is only going to ever be one way. This person can only be stuck in this one mode of being, and they can never grow beyond their mistakes and their faults and their flaws. But this game is very much concerned with, yes, you can. You get to decide who you are, and even showing people and sharing that those vulnerabilities and those imperfections can help them grow into a more positive direction.
Right.
And growing and sharing and connecting with people can only help deepen relationships.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think to kind of like put another little bow on that, something that I really like about the game is how in discussing what he did, like a lot of it is kind of owning the actions and becoming a person who always takes responsibility for their actions and, it is right to apologize when you realize you've done wrong, when you realize you've hurt someone, but never trying to erase those things, even if you wish they hadn't happened. It's not trying to bury it. It's trying to own it and then grow beyond it.
And he is also, in accepting his responsibility, acknowledging some things he can no longer make right.
Right.
But trying to grow in a new way to find a new way to heal, maybe around these harms or these breaches that he's created.
So to close up, we're almost out of time. It goes so fast when we get something like this. But if you could give God of War 4 a subtitle of your own making, what would that be?
I think the subtitle would be The Choices We Make That Matter.
As opposed to those that don't? Or the choices we make matter?
I think the choices we make matter. That's
Yeah, okay. It's okay. I just wanted to check because, maybe there's a distinction there. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Jared, for joining me for 2
of course
episodes. Again, you signed up for 1 and we ended up with 2. So I'm very grateful for your time. I enjoyed talking about this.
I had a great time talking about this too.
Yeah. And I hope all of you out there listening did as well. Thank you for hanging with us through 2 episodes on God of War 4. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, with my incredible guest, Jared Friesen. And this has been God of War 4, The Choices That We Make Matter, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time.